I wonder if an angel could become fallen and then become good again or something like that, or then go
I
back and
think
forth.
anybody can change their path.
Yeah.
You can change your path at any moment because you have a choice.
So so like some people like say that angels don't have free will. There's been some, but I think it's because and there's actually
Well, I think they did have free.
The pines are moving without.
So you remember Art Bell, of course. I mean, we used to listen to that all the time.
He was my favorite.
And that's something that I miss from these days because you don't necessarily have those same experiences. Like now we're overwhelmed by choices. You have so much that you could listen to in your car when you're on a road trip. And back like, before cell phones and stuff like that, and before all this stuff, when we still listen to the radio, you had AM radio and you had coast to coast AM and you had Art Bell who basically talked about the same stuff we're talking about. And he had a phone in show. You could phone in, you could tell stories to Art Bell how, you had a UFO experience. And this guy would play from like what 10 o'clock 10 p.m. to like 4 in the morning or something like that. He would just go on talking about this stuff, and he had this great voice, and they had, if you've never heard Art Bell, you can still look up, there's still reruns on YouTube of Art Bell, and they're phenomenal to listen to. And there was this one guy who called in, and his name was Mel, and he had this giant hole in his yard, and he would talk about how he'd go out there and he'd let this rope down, and the hole just seemed to go on forever. Or he'd try to drop something in the hole, and you'd never hear it, and people would throw stuff away in it. He talked about even how his dog fell in the hole, but then came back later, and it looked like the same dog, but the dog was like mean or something like that, almost like a whole Stephen King's Pet Cemetery type of story. And then like he talked about how the government came and like coordinated off the hole and like made him, they ended up paying like millions of dollars so he just moved out of the country and they could just keep the hole, and they sectioned it off like you can't even see it. Do you remember that story?
I do. In fact, some of the things to add to that is that, we live on a plane that's on the surface of the earth. And there's a lot of people that think that some aliens have lived way underneath the earth.
Yeah,
that there's different levels of existence and levels inside the earth.
Yeah.
And so that if you're 2 or 3 miles down, which is not that far, you're talking about temperature changes, where it's constantly warm. It's not 30 degrees outside where you're freezing, but it's 70 or 80 degrees underneath the ground at all times, and it's constant. And so they can grow plants and they can do all these things, and they experience different wavelengths and vibrations because every atom that is on this in our existence actually resonates with a frequency. And so if everything does that, some things resonate with different frequencies. And so from the top of the world to the center of the world, things change. And so it's a different dimension for us.
So there's things living deep within the earth that we don't even know about. Like the aliens don't always come from the sky. They could come from within the earth or under the ocean.
Well, aliens could be what people would call angels.
Right.
I mean, I've always believed that, if you read the Bible, that aliens may not be, anything that's not from this world is alien to us. So let's just get the word out of the way, right? Alien is just not human.
Right.
So there's a lot that's going to not be human, right?
Yeah, and if we saw some creature that didn't look like us, and wouldn't know where it's from, and we would automatically just put the word alien on it.
Yeah, so alien sounds weird, but truthfully, I mean, if there was a creator and there was something overlooking our species, and angels were, the watchers.
Like the Book of Enoch.
Like the Book of Enoch. I mean, it goes back.
Mm-hmm.
So the watchers, right? Um, come on. Fallen angels, that's the Watchers. They came down here, mated with our with
Other
our
than that, yeah.
yeah, and giants came from that. So the bottom line is fallen angels from there.
I had this weird thought on the way here, thinking that we were going to talk about this stuff, and that you talk about fallen angels, like an angel was, I guess, good, so to speak, and then it became, or it just fell from earth. I mean, but I wonder if an angel could become fallen and then become good again, or something like that, or they can go
I
back and
think
look.
anybody can change their path.
Yeah.
You can change your path at any moment because you have a choice.
So so like some people like say that angels don't have free will. There's been some, but I think it's because and there's actually
Well, I think they did have free will because they became fallen angels. They
that
made the
makes
decision that was against whatever they were supposed to do.
yeah.
So they became a fallen angel. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, they had some will to change what they were doing, and
Free will.
yeah,
They talk about that, but the bottom line is I think you're right. I think you know everybody looks at this and they just put everything in a category, but you have to have an open mind.
yeah. Sometimes people will put in the category and they become so sure that that's the only way it can be.
And they live by it, right?
Yeah, they lock onto
They
that.
fight about it.
Yeah,
There's wars about
there's war. Yeah,
one thing, but we really don't know
we don't.
what's going on,
Yeah,
right? Because
no.
we've been around for like 200 years that we knew stuff. However, maybe 500 years with the Mayans and a lot of the guys from Gobekli Tepe and stuff 10,000 years ago that watched the stars because they didn't have movie theaters like we do. There was no entertainment in the middle of the night other than maybe like, what is that in the sky? So they became astronomers. There wasn't anything else.
Yeah, they didn't have phones to stare at. There's no light pollution. So when they
No.
looked up in the sky, it looked as magnificent. Like if you live in the city the whole time, you look up at the sky and you may not even see the stars. But when you drive out to the country, all of a sudden you realize what you're missing when you can see the Milky Way just up there taking up the sky, and it's so magnificent that you just want to stare at it. And then they gazed at fire.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and so sometimes I think it's interesting to think about. So if you go back to like, if we really were primates, go back 400,000 years before we ever had fire or whatever, and you think about the first human or first primate or first, the that actually got control of fire. Like, what was the feeling that being had in their hands? And then you think about the first being that actually like did conceive of a religion or did conceive of God. We have a
This is where things got good or evil because if I hated somebody, then if I found fire, I could burn them to death.
yeah. Well, go like to the story.
Or if I didn't need to heat the family, and save everybody from like a cold winter, I could do that. So it's like, wait a minute, I wield power now.
Yeah, yeah.
I have weapons and I've got tools to make life good.
And you go back to like the scene from Space Odyssey 2001 where that monkey takes that he hits the other monkey with the bone, and then he takes the bone and he throws it up into the air and becomes the space station.
He said bone. But yeah, the space station. Yeah.
Yeah, like in the movie 2001 Space Odyssey.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's so cool. I just think that angels just have an open mind. Um, I think there's watchers out there. I do believe that there are people watching out
Something protecting us.
for either me or us. I really do. Have always felt that, been told that. Why? Why? I mean, why was that made up, right? I think there's some things in our DNA, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, where, these blueprints are made from the ultra small down to the atomic size. You know, the blueprint for a human's body to work the way it is would be something that if you saw that blueprint, you would have to be really small, really small.
Yeah.
And like I'm talking about, like an ant would be too big because that would be 50 times bigger than your sperm.
So you have to be like a virus or a bacteria or.
There is something going on that is, the blueprints are way smaller, and they know what to do to make things grow and be big. This is a whole another conversation, but there's something to that. I mean, we were nothing, and then we grew into something 75,000 times bigger.
We all started out as something very, very tiny.
Yes.
And it's like a hologram. In fact, there's a CIA file that talks about the Earth being like a hologram, like the universe being like a hologram. Because if you take a hologram and you slice a part of it and you look at the part of it, you can see the whole thing with any part of that small piece. Just like with DNA, the whole thing is written in there. Just like with the seed of the sequoia tree, the entire sequoia tree is written in that tiny little seed. And when Jesus says you have to have the faith of a mustard seed, I think you could kind of like use that analogy, like because the mustard seed grows into, or if the sequoia tree seed grows into a huge tree, and it's just like all you need is that little seed.
Well, that's why I say have an open mind, because to me, religion, just take the word religion away, because that's not really what it is. Faith is what it is. To me, it's like, you're supposed to have faith that this is the way it's going to go. And we've been told this for thousands of years. And why? Why is that even out there? Well, the bottom line is you have to have faith to not believe, or you have to have faith to believe. Because if you don't believe it, that means you have faith that there's nothing there.
And you don't have any proof of that. So
that's because you have faith that there's nothing there.
Yeah.
So faith is something just that you believe.
It goes either way.
It goes either way. So, but is there a creator? I think there's a designer. I think there's somebody who had, intention on making things how it is. And you can call that God, you can call it whatever it is, but there's something going on far more than we understand.
Yeah, and to conceive that we could understand it all or know all of it, that's where you're closing your mind again into like a narrow point of focus.
Yeah, don't be closed-minded.
Yeah.
This is way too big. I mean, we're like this little, game that just finally woke up and, like looked around for 1 second, and we think we know it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know anything. So, but that's why we bring this weird crap to you guys. Right?
Yeah.
This is amazing stuff.